Hey, welcome back to a brand new video where for some reason I have to state the obvious and speak ad nauseum about such a serious topic because some idiot can't comprehend the simple and understandable concept of racism bad lol. This is so disappointing. It's shocking that we live in the 21st century and yet somehow people still can't comprehend that basic human rights should exist and injustice against someone based on their race is unacceptable. So here I am today to go over some stupid furries video where they try and explain why they think racism is a good thing, and later in the video they try and explain why slavery is a good thing. Why? Genuinely, why would you make this video? All you're doing is destroying your chances of ever being liked by anyone, and you're also completely damaging the years of progression we've made and enabling racists to try and discriminate against people again. This is such a step back, and well, let's get into it, I suppose. But before I do, if you're new to my channel or haven't already, I hate doing these sellout intros, it sucks, but to an extent you have to sell out on YouTube. Please go down below, click subscribe, because I'm going to be working to get my way up to 25k by the end of the year. Your support would mean a lot, and I make videos every single day on various different topics. Normally they're more fun, this one's a more serious one, and I know that sucks. But I gotta talk about this today because it got on my nerves so much that I couldn't let it go by. I also have my other social media down linked in the description, so you can go check those out and support me there too to get to see more of me. With all of that out of the way, and with the obvious warning that this video is going to cover racism and basically every other injustice possible, so if you're sensitive to basically everything, don't watch this video. Let's get right into it.
Now, before you all grab your pitchforks and storm into the comments section over the title of the video alone, let me just say that of course racism is bad. I wouldn't make a 10-minute video defending something so obviously terrible.
He then proceeds to make a 10-minute video defending something so terrible.
Generations have been ruined because of racism, and lives are still getting destroyed by it. However, I don't think we should be painting racism as entirely evil, because, well, there's a reason why people are racist. And that's not because people want to be bad, it's because there are objective benefits to being racist.
It appears to me, at least, that this guy doesn't actually even understand the definition of racism, as racism as defined by Oxford Languages is prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism by an individual, community, or institution against a person or people on the basis of their membership of a particular race or ethnic group, typically one that is a minority or marginalized. And in theory, it's the belief that different races possess distinct characteristics, abilities, or qualities, especially so as to distinguish them as inferior or superior to one another. Nowhere in that definition or any studies does it specify that racism is caused by the benefits that you can get from being racist. I don't know how this guy came to this conclusion, but it's more than just ignorant, it's downright stupid. People don't discriminate because they benefit from it. They discriminate because of a pure hatred towards another race, or because they see themselves as superior to that race. How would you misconstrue that to be people discriminating because they can benefit from it?
And I don't think we should be discrediting these benefits with all this virtue signaling bullshit, because we are seriously reaching a low point in history without racism.
Okay, ignoring how completely batshit crazy and annoying the last statement he just made is, how does this guy say we're reaching a low point because we're equal or more equal and are accepting people more no matter who they are or what culture they come from? That is insane.
A lot of people don't know this, but racism is actually the natural state for a lot of people.
Okay, who the fuck told this reject Freddy Fazbear's character that he had any idea what he was talking about here? It takes one Google search to see a study spearheaded by CNN which states the following, that children aren't born racist. Where is this dude's sources? Just because he was raised to be racist doesn't mean everyone else was.
By forming exclusive groups, people are able to be amongst like-minded individuals, and the people infight significantly less. This is because people who think the same don't often come into conflict. Grouping together also provides a sense of pride.
While culture can have a part in how likely you are to disagree with someone, melanin does not have any effect like that, unless you are racist or discriminate purely based on race. There is no proven statistic that suggests in any way you are more likely to get in a disagreement with or not get along with as well with a different race. This is simply an opinionated statement made by someone completely uneducated. There is no biological or psychological difference between anyone based on melanin.
I mean, think about it. If you're surrounded by people like you, that think like you, and most importantly look like you, then you feel like you belong.
Maybe if you live in the 1940s and still hold the same view that race in any way affects how you think. I lived in Thailand for a whole year. Never once did I feel like I belonged less. The only reason you would think like that is if you already have preconceived prejudice against someone.
Segregation is an objective good in its utility because it leads to the formation of ethnostates, and ethnostates are historically proven to last longer than states that embrace polyethnicity.
Okay, provide me one source that shows that ethnostates are any more efficient or any more beneficial than any other kind of state. I doubt you probably could. I doubt there's any source that would suggest that in any way. I did my own research to try and find one, and couldn't find anything that correlated that idea in the slightest, so I have no idea where you got the information from, but I really think it's stupid. Secondly, where does it matter if we're more likely to succeed by discriminating against people and segregating? It's still not the right moral thing to do, it's still completely reprehensible, and there's so much more gained from introducing other cultures than there is lost. I feel like the way you've portrayed this is ridiculously ignorant, and there are a lot of external factors that would also have an effect in this calculation. I highly doubt there is any way you could conclude this information in any kind of way. But it's fine, guys. The furry said, source, just trust me. It's historically proven.
I mean, look at China. They have over 5,000 years of history because they are discriminatory and wary of other races, while also cooperating with their own.
Or maybe it's because China has a population of 1.4 billion, which is insanely large and insanely difficult to get rid of, and also because they enslave a large proportion of their population to do all of their industrial work for them, and they take advantage of their population to survive and keep the rich people in power, protected, safe, and healthy. I'll actually pose you a question. Do you think the life you live in America is a more fulfilled and more comfortable life than a life you would live in China? Because if you don't, you probably haven't done any research, because in China, the average person makes a salary of $13,000 a year. In America, the average person makes a salary of $31,000 a year. That is a much better, healthier, and free life that you're living, especially because in America, you're not being forced into labor. More history doesn't mean that history is better.
When you work, create, and fight, you are doing so for the betterment of the people you care about. Your own people, a distinct race.
This is just a bigoted and ignorant statement. What does this even mean? No, most people aren't just living their lives for their own race. If that was the case, we wouldn't be seeing the progression we're seeing in the real world. What is your point here? This is just... what?
Living within an ethnostate creates an us versus them mentality, and it's been proven time and time again that having a defined, tangible enemy that is perceived to be pure evil unifies a people. By comparison, blurring the lines of morality with all this not all black people talk just weakens everyone's resolve. Take Osama bin Laden in the War on Terror, for example. People rallied behind the tangible goal of killing Osama bin Laden, and everything was great. But once he was gone, suddenly the enemy was terrorism itself. Not any one group or person. It could have been anyone. What were we supposed to do then? It's not like we can go and just shoot terrorism dead.
maybe I'm reading into this wrong, but didn't he literally just destroy his own initial argument? His initial argument is that people need to be racist because it benefits us as a whole. But then he says that you can't just hate a generalized community like terrorists. Surely he's just destroyed his own point there, because not everyone in one race is the exact same, and not every person in a defined group is a terrorist or anything like that. You can be a terrorist and be from any country, race, or anything else like that. This is a completely ignorant statement once again.
The politically correct may preach that globalization is the only way things should be, but a divided world gives states and people true independence, and thus responsibility for our own mistakes and development. I know I personally feel that certain races contribute significantly less than others to our culture, such as Mexicans and Indians, and the best way to avoid this is simply to divide people by race.
Firstly, he states that India and Mexico have contributed a lot less than any other group in his opinion. So, I'll point out a few things that India have given to the world, and then I'll point out a few things that Mexico has. Firstly, India gave us the cure for leprosy. India gave us shampoo. India gave us the world's first university. India gave us Buddhism. India gave us cataract surgery. USB was first developed by India. And from Mexico, have you heard of chocolate, the colored television, earthquake-resistant foundations? There's so much that countries like India and Mexico provide to the world, just like every other country. People act like just because a country is less spoke about, it means that they contribute less. Every country has its own achievements and contributions to the world, just like every population and race does.
Suddenly, there would be no more races writing on the achievements of others, or even the mere perception that some group was leeching off of our own hard work. Our achievements can be credited only to ourselves.
This dude really wants racism so that people can be correctly credited for their work. What? Are you genuinely that frustrated that people don't recognize the work of Americans? That you've decided that for some reason we need to go back to discriminating against people based on their race? How does this make any sense in any kind of mindset?
Racism puts people in check. When you're constantly critical of another race's actions, you're going to call them out on it at any chance you can get. This is far preferable to the alternative of being blindly accepting of all of a race's mistakes, something we do so much in today's political climate.
Wait, this dude's talking about the same climate right now that we live in, where the BLM movement is huge, where the anti-Asian hate movement is growing by the day, and where cancel culture is at an all-time high. How is this dude unironically saying all of this? What?
Blind acceptance and aid of other countries is actively screwing us over. I mean, Africa is leeching resources from the first world all because some liberal politician sees that their skin color is dark and takes pity on them.
How is the race of the people in Africa related at all to the contributions that our countries make towards Africa? We support Africa because it's a country that's struggling to find any financial support. We do the same to countries like Syria, but you haven't mentioned that because Syria has a largely Caucasian population. Our contributions aren't chalked up to race or anything else like that. Our contributions are made to countries that are in need of donations to support the people within them.
So they funnel food and water to them, instead of the hardworking men, women, and children in their own country. Shouldn't Africa be left to their own devices to figure it out for themselves?
Countries like America do also support their own population. However, they provide more support to countries that are more in need of that support, like Africa, countries that struggle to find any aid for themselves and probably wouldn't be able to survive without the help of countries like America.
Similarly, Syria is pouring rapists and murderers into Europe, and people are just making the gates into Europe even wider to accommodate them. What a surprise, the rapists and murderers they willingly let into their country raped and murdered people.
According to Wikipedia, research suggests that people tend to overestimate the relationship between immigration and criminality, and that the media tends to erroneously depict immigrants as particularly crime-prone. The academic literature provides mixed findings for the relationship between immigration and crime worldwide, but finds for the United States that immigration either has no impact on the crime rate or that it reduces the crime rate. A meta-analysis of 51 studies from 1994 to 2014 on the relationship between immigration and the crime in the United States found that overall immigration reduces crime, but the relationship is very weak.
Oh, but they can't do anything else because they don't have the same rights as us. Oh, they're like this because of nurture, they say as they continue to let these primates fuck our countries. Maybe, if they were told to stay in their own shitholes, they'd find that they have the same rights as in their own country, and they'd figure out that the only way to find a better life is to start by bettering their own land and not by running away from it.
Ah, yes, the good old victim blaming technique, that if you run away from your problems, you're part of the problem, and that you can just solve all your problems for yourself, like there's any possible way that they could actually take any action against a country that is constantly and actively working to silence them, to victimize them, and to bully them into accepting that speaking out or trying to act in any way to help themselves is likely to get them killed or jailed. You have to sometimes run away from countries. Countries like North Korea don't allow their people to even know about what's going on outside of the world. And that's why there are companies that are actively trying to get USB sticks with helpful information into North Korea so that hopefully people in North Korea can get this information and can actively learn about what's going on outside so that they can escape what's happening to them. You cannot shame victims for being abused by people taking advantage of them, and you cannot just expect them to save themselves on their own.
In my opinion, the worst offender of all is India. They're pumping CO2 into the world like it's a competition. They're third in the world in terms of CO2 emissions. You know why? It's because they have a culture practically based entirely around being unhygienic.
And you know who's above India? The United States. Why is it that it's only a problem for you when it's a country that you discriminate against or dislike? Obviously, there is a problem with CO2 emissions, but you cannot nitpick which countries are doing it just so that you can use that to further your racial bias against them. America is more guilty than India of this exact same thing, especially when India has 4 times the population of America and are emitting less. The irony is insane.
Admittedly, white people do have their own shortcomings too, though they are less drastic than other races. They've only ruined pizza and Italian carbonara, which weren't too good to begin with, so not much loss there.
Actually, white people have done a lot of bad too. We just don't talk about it as much. From racism to the anti-Semitism that exists within the white populace, there is a whole lot of injustice and terrible behavior seen within the white population. However, people don't discuss that and instead try to focus all of their blame on other races.
If you've stuck with me thus far, then I need you to bear with me again, as I realize what I'm about to say may sound bad. Nevertheless, I have to say this. Slavery is good. Every great civilization is built on the shoulders of disposable workforce, and it's even better if this workforce is perceived as having less rights than a regular citizen. And this loops back to my main point, why we need to bring back racism. Racism desensitizes us to slavery. During the golden age of America, slavery was running rampant, and no one batted an eye. And this was because blacks were considered less than human thanks to 3/5 compromise. That compromise let the American people take advantage of them without any adverse psychological effects, giving industry a massive boost and allowing America to develop into the superpower it is today.
And that makes that past behavior tolerable, acceptable, or understandable in any kind of way? Yes, taking advantage of and abusing a population can yield benefits for the abusers. However, that doesn't make it acceptable, understandable, or logical in any kind of way. Taking advantage of and abusing minorities or people based on race is a terrible and unjustifiable thing that should under no means ever be considered tolerable or justifiable. This statement in itself is so ignorant to the amount of pain that discrimination, racism, and slavery causes, and is so upsetting to the many people that have died to get us to the place where we are today, where the world doesn't see slavery as a viable or acceptable option anymore. It actually upsets me that there are people in this world that think it is understandable, acceptable, or tolerable to do this kind of behavior in any way. You are part of the problem, and you should never be forgiven for this statement. You are a terrible person for thinking this.
You know why Trump says make America great again?
Because he's racist, sexist, transphobic, and banned from social media with valid reason?
It's because America used to be great. Used to be great because people used to be racist and own it. People wore racism like a badge of honor. Today we stigmatize racism, and thus America is no longer great again. We need slavery. We need a group of people who are expendable for manual labor. China has been doing this with their own people, and they've become a global superpower from absolutely nothing. Imagine how powerful we could be if we took advantage of minorities and the racially inferior.
Theoretically, countries could be better off by taking advantage of minorities and abusing them for their own benefit, the same as they could be by abusing their own population. That doesn't make it morally okay, and that doesn't mean that it should ever be considered a viable option, as we could theoretically be in a better standard of living by abusing different races. That doesn't mean, however, that we should do that, because by abusing different races and taking advantage of them, we are ruining their lives for the self-benefit of ourselves. And not only is that selfish, but it's unjustifiable. If I had to choose between living a wealthier life and ruining other people's lives, or living less wealthily and instead having equal rights for everyone, I would choose to live less wealthily, because that is the correct choice. We should by default consider everyone else equal, and we should by default accept that everyone else should at least have the same human rights as we do. How would you feel to be put in the same position as many minorities have been purely because of your race or because of your culture? You would probably hate that, and you would fight so hard to get justice for yourself. So don't you dare try and shame other people for doing that, or say that we should ignore them and instead ruin their lives.
We need a group of people we can oppress and use, and that shouldn't be people of the same blood. Without a group to take advantage of, the populace becomes discontent due to the unnatural workload, and development stagnates.
Firstly, this is untrue. Development hasn't stagnated in any way. If anything, we're only developing more with time, and we're developing on a faster rate with time as well. Look at basically every development we've made in the past few years. Medically, technologically, and digitally. We have made an insane amount of progression in the past few years that has never been seen before in history, so it's ignorant of you to say this. But that's where I'm going to end this video. I cannot be bothered to listen to this bigot continue to talk about why he thinks that other races should be discriminated against. It's more than ignorant, it's unjustifiable. This guy claims he's not racist, and he states at the start that racism bad, and then continues to explain why America should bring it back. This dude is a racist, and he is terrible, genuinely terrible. But that's where I'll leave this video. Thank you for watching, and if you have enjoyed or agree with me, feel free to go down below and subscribe. That's it for this video though, and you can check out some of my other ones down below in my channel. I make videos every single day, and you can also check out my other social media to keep up to date on everything me related. Thanks for watching, I'll see you next time, peace.
Says she wanna rock with it like me. I'm a stylish guy. Spend a little guap with it like me. We can catch a fly. Says she wanna rock with it like me.